Today I'm going to show you how I made a coat out of an old quilt. Every now and then I love to dive into a good sewing project. It relaxes my brain in ways that nothing else does. You find these well-loved, well-worn quilts, and I just know someone's grandmother out there made this like 30 years ago, and if I don't rescue it from the thrift store, it's gonna go in the landfill. So I bring them home every now and then and I make projects out of it. And I love this idea of the Dharma bum quilted coat. Anyways, here's my upcycle, let's go. I already cut the quilt by the time I'm filming this because I was so excited. I wanted to make sure it actually worked before I showed you, but I laid it out so you can see how I cut the pattern. Here's the main body. I actually cut it like that with a fold so that I would get the thing. I really wanted to preserve the edge because it's so old, it has an interesting texture, and I wanted that on the bottom of the coat and the sleeves. I thought that beginners might need a clearer example of how I cut the fabric, so follow along with this paper cutout. Okay, just imagine that this rectangle is the quilt. I did first is I folded along the good edge that I want to keep like this, and I cut out the shape of the back. So it's symmetrical. And then for the sleeves, they're actually not symmetrical this way. They're slightly flatter on the back and curvier in the front. So what I did on these is I folded here and I cut them together because I wanted my sleeves to be 100% identical. And I kept the edge of the quilt for both of them. So keeping the beautiful edge of the quilt on this side and the front, these are the two front halves of the coat. So I folded it, cut it like this so that they are perfectly symmetrical. How we put it together is we have the back, these become round donuts, and then these sew together. So you have your open right side of your jacket, and then you sew your left side on so you have your open left side of the jacket. And last, the sleeves on. And then at the end, I did the neck. Step 2, choose the thread. I chose this dark red one to contrast and kind of match the colors of the quilt, and then white for the bottom. This is optional, but I decided to add some decorative thread work on the sleeves, and also to patch some of the problem areas in the quilt. For the decorative design, I used this moon-shaped stitch on my machine that I knew would make an interesting zigzag pattern. For each of the rows of squares on my quilt, I made a moon stitch down the entire thing. And don't forget to reverse stitch to secure the ends. There were a few areas where the patches were loose, so I pressed them and then sewed them down. I chose scrap fabric from a dress I had worn on many adventures, and I picked a flower that would match the block I was trying to replace. I fold down each side and press it into a good square. Be careful because the fabric is very hot at this point. I've just touched too many fires. I wanted to keep the character of the original piece, so I tucked my patch inside and then sewed it down around it. And I added a lot of zigzag because I wanted this to look patchy and kind of haphazard. There were 2 more patches that needed repair, and so I did a similar technique of creating a flower square about the same size, pressing it, and then sewing it on.
Yesterday, there was sun and there was rain, beauty in the mundane, and as the light startled our eyes, we let go of disguise. something in the air and a sparkly shimmer on our skin, restoring everything within. Oh, dreamy, breezy, we go easy, easy on our tiptoes, undercover agents of the other, beyond gravel, beyond all.
Step 3. Sew the arms down the length. Fold the sleeve so that the right side is facing in. First pin it. And then we'll sew it using a straight stitch. And I'm going to finish these seams with a zigzag stitch. Step 4, we'll sew the sides together. So match the correct sides and pin it inside out. The right side to the back and the left side to the back, including the shoulders. I like to try it on at this point just to get a feel for it, and this passed the check for me. I did the same as I did for the sleeves, so a straight stitch all the way down and then a zigzag stitch to cover the seam. And then I sewed the shoulders in the same way with a straight stitch, but I didn't do a zigzag. I try it on again just to make sure it fits well. It would be a lot easier to adjust it here than later. But I'm happy with how it looks. And so I'm ready to continue. I like a really solid shoulder since it's just a straight stitch holding it together right now. So what I'm going to do is press open the stitch. And then I have this really old bias tape that I've found in my cupboard. And I'm going to use it because I like the dark blue, and it's kind of a, even though it's bias tape, it's quite sturdy. So I'm going to use that to reinforce just by sewing it in. And I sew 4 lines because I kind of like the way the stitching works and solid heavy duty feel. Step 6 is attaching the sleeves. Next, we attach the sleeves, and we do this by turning them right side out and pinning them to the arm opening. Make sure that the top of your sleeve matches the top of your shoulder, and that the seam of your sleeve matches the seam of the side. For best results, remove the machine platform to make it easier to sew. and sew all around the opening of the sleeve. Since the fabric is so bulky, this takes a little bit of finessing, but just be patient and stick with it and you'll get through it. Especially if you're new to sewing, don't be surprised if there's a moment of frustration and you have to take a deep breath and go back and redo what you just did. Do both sides, and I finished the edges by using a zigzag stitch again. Alright, time to try it on. Guys, I love it. It's like so ridiculous, slouchy. It's definitely crazy. Here we go. So I'm going to secure this with secure it with the bias tape, and I think that's all. I think I'm going to leave the sleeves long. But anyways, there you have it. Real quick before I do the bias tape, I noticed this was kind of fraying, so I'm going to reinforce it with a zigzag stitch around there, clean it up a little bit, make sure everything's secure, and then put the bias tape on. Fold the bias tape back about 1/4 inch and press it, because this is going to be the nice end of your collar. Start on the inside of your coat with the first fold of the bias tape, and make sure that 1/4 inch is sticking up over the edge so you can fold it in later, and start pinning all around the collar. And this is what it looks like when it's all pinned in. And we're going to sew right on that first fold. And then when I go, I'm going to sew right along that line. So at first on the wrong side, so that when I sew on the right side, it's one really neat line. And you want your bias tape to be about 1/4 inch or more over, because we're going to fold it around in a careful way so that we have a nice edge. And then sew a nice neat line down the outside of the coat. Here I demonstrate how to create that nice pressed edge. First heat the bias tape, then fold it in, press it, and then fold it over and press it again. And then press along the remaining edge of the collar. And I'm using my needle in the far left position to get right up to the edge. And there you have it, my quilt to coat upcycle. I love it. I think it's, look at that. Like, it's a little bit, I could put a button or a zip, but I think for now I'm just gonna leave it open. Let me know in the comments what you think. Let me know if you're gonna try this or if you have any questions. And do you think I should put a zipper or a button? Maybe I'll make another video if I do. But for now, I would say it's a success. I think I would style it with a pair of jeans and a crop top or a t-shirt, depending on how I feel. But let me know what you think. I do love the vintage 70s vibe, so if you're into this, I recommend the mini. The florals. I love a good, bold combination of prints. You know me. And I couldn't resist full clown mode. How is this gonna look? I don't have a red nose, but I do have tennis shoes. Anyway guys, I love it. Feel free, I'm Laura, the artist and producer at Moontime Collective. Please subscribe, like, comment, your support is appreciated. Especially if you want to follow me on my journey through the inner and outer worlds. Upcycled quilt jackets included.